Ballad of Hollis Brown is Bob Dylan's second song from the album The Times They Are A-Changin'. So that was a tough spot for this song. It comes on the album, and this is back when the order of songs on an album really mattered. Came right after the, history-making The Times They Are A-Changin'. Was Ballad of Hollis Brown then destined to be a song that could stand on its own, could stand out in that light, in that position? Well, absolutely, because it is one of the most powerful songs you will ever hear. There's no doubt that the song owes a big debt to one of Dylan's musical heroes, Woody Guthrie. And this whole album, his follow-up to becoming a star with the freewheelin' Bob Dylan, is him still at the height of his Guthrie obsession. Almost looks like the same person there, doesn't it? Woody Guthrie was of course called the Dust Bowl Balladeer. He chronicled that national tragedy, and I'm not saying that this song is definitely about a fictional Dust Bowl incident, but it fits in with that theme. Because we have the story of an impoverished farmer who's driven to the horrible, desperate measures. Guess you don't worry about spoilers with a song that's well over half a century old. So yeah, he kills his wife, children, and then himself, giving them all a quick death instead of the slow one they were all experiencing from starvation. And if that's depressing, wait till we get to the lyrics. First, though, the song was really influential, as you can imagine. Some notable covers. I think the most notable would be Nina Simone. You can easily find on YouTube a live version of her playing it on the piano. It's fantastic, unsurprisingly. Iggy Pop and the Stooges covered it. Talk about a switch-up. Musically, big-time switch-up, but also a great version. The late, great Leon Russell has a kind of a funky version. You have to hear it, a funky howling version. Have to hear it to believe it. And even today, well into the 21st century, there's a band with the name Hollis Brown from Brooklyn, New York. When we talked about Woody Guthrie's all but certain influence on this song, the best way to think of the song is as kind of a mix of the Guthrie influence and the Appalachian murder ballads. In particular, the song Pretty Polly, which was clearly Dylan's model when he got started in crafting his own. That song fits the classic murder ballad formula, whereas Ballad of Hollis Brown definitely does not. Here's Doc Boggs talking about it and playing it in 1966, but talking about his 1927 recording of that song, has roots in traditional English music, like so much American roots music does, so it's those two strains from Dylan's influences that come together on this song. If you took all of Dylan's major influences, but then removed the rock and roll, the beat poetry, to a certain extent the Delta blues, and you kept what was left, then you would get this song. The song is mostly in the AAB format, so most stanzas are like this one here at the bottom of the screen. Same line repeated twice, followed by a third different line. Your grass is turning black, there's no water in your well. Your grass is turning black, there's no water in your well. You spent your last lone dollar on 7 shotgun shells. That plus Dylan's guitar accompaniment give the song a very steady, like almost merciless rhythm. Sometimes, including on Bob Dylan's official site, as seen here, you'll see the lines split up like this. Either way, it's 11 stanzas, 348 words, by the way, well past what The Times They Are A-Changin' had, interestingly. That epic song only has 250 in comparison. Regardless, the song starts by introducing Hollis Brown. He lives on the outside of town, with his wife and 5 children, and his cabin fallen down. It's broken down, I'm pretty sure, in the original album version. Boy, he loves to play games with changing lyrics, doesn't he? Same thing with rugged and ragged here below, so I'm going to say ragged. You looked for work and money, and you walked a ragged mile. You looked for work and money, and you walked a ragged mile. Your children are so hungry that they don't know how to smile. And that is obviously just a brutal stanza, but especially that last line. Your children are so hungry that they don't know how to smile. Something important to note here is, from stanza 1 to stanza 2, the perspective shifts. In the first, Dylan is telling us about Hollis Brown. In the second, he's talking directly to him. You looked for work and money, and you walked a ragged mile. So he's bringing us much closer to the subject. And now we stay in that perspective as Dylan just relentlessly reminds the killer himself of the desperate situation that led him to kill. Your baby's eyes look crazy, they're tugging at your sleeve. Your baby's eyes look crazy, they're tugging at your sleeve. You walk the floor and wonder why with every breath you breathe. I'm only going to read the last line from the next stanza. Is there anyone that knows? Is there anyone that cares? Well, there isn't. That is, unless it's us. And I think we're supposed to ask ourselves that at this point. Because remember, Dylan has brought us kind of face to face with the subject in real time. You prayed to the Lord above, oh please send you a friend. You prayed to the Lord above, oh please send you a friend. Your empty pockets tell you that you ain't got no friend. So God is not answering and nobody is showing up to help. And now see how things just keep getting ratcheted, just tighter and tighter. Your babies are crying louder, it's pounding on your brain. Your babies are crying louder now, it's pounding on your brain. Your wife's screams are stabbing you like the dirty driving rain. Dylan, writing this song, wields the pen really like a surgeon with a scalpel. It's just so precise and cuts so well. And the pressure just keeps mounting on Hollis Brown. Remember, this is the Ballad of Hollis Brown. He's the subject, but he's got his wife's screaming, the accusatory looks from his children, the desperate looks. Your grass is turning black, there's no water in your well. Your grass is turning black, there's no water in your well. You spent your last lone dollar on 7 shotgun shells. When grass dies, it turns brown. It doesn't really turn black, literally, but black is the color of death. This is the first hint of where things are going. That's the first line in the stanza, and the last one, Hollis Brown just bought with his last dollar 7 shotgun shells. That also indicates where things are going. As does the following, I think. Way out in the wilderness, a cold coyote calls. Way out in the wilderness, a cold coyote calls. Your eyes fix on the shotgun that's hanging on the wall. Well, the shotgun part, obviously, but first, the coyote. A coyote will not attack a human, but will eat a dead one. And mythically, the howling of dogs, wolves, you name it, anything like that, a canine, has long been associated with death. The coyote here kind of plays the part of the circling vulture. Nature itself realizes what is about to happen. Meanwhile, Hollis's eyes fixating on the shotgun on the wall, that in conjunction with the fact that he bought 7 shotgun shells, spells doom, because remember, it's Hollis Brown, his wife, and his 5 children, 7 family members, 7 shotgun shells. That line then about acquiring those shells, as soon as the number 7 is mentioned, we're invited to realize that. There's a lot of alliteration in the song, even for Dylan, so just here, notice way out in the wilderness, right? Way wilderness. A cold coyote calls. Cold coyote calls. Earlier, bad blood, screams, stabbing. All of this adds to the incessant driving nature of the song. As does the music, but you'll have to hear that for yourself. Now Dylan kind of gets into the head, literally and figuratively, of the killer. Your brain is a-bleedin' and your legs can't seem to stand. Your brain is a-bleedin' and your legs can't seem to stand. Your eyes fix on the shotgun that you're holding in your hand. That's the most chilling part of the song for me. And not that any of us would know, but it seems accurate the way this happens with that missing time component. It's just creepy, and it, again, seems accurate. Brown is looking at the shotgun on his wall. All of a sudden, he's holding it. Remember the importance of the number 7 as we start the penultimate stanza. There's 7 breezes a-blowin' all around the cabin door. There's 7 breezes a-blowin' all around the cabin door. 7 shots ring out like the ocean's pounding roar. So the deed is done, and Dylan really gives a master class on how to, as a storyteller, cover a moment like that. We don't see it happen. It's not direct. It's not gory. It's just eerie and off camera, if you will. We have these 7 breezes blowing around the door that seem to me like the 7 ghosts. The shots ring out like the ocean's pounding roar. That's an interesting device. It reminds us of the driving rain from earlier. Kind of ironic because they're basically in a desert, right? A drought-ridden farmland. And those 2 verbs, the driving and the pounding, add again to just the relentless nature of the song. And of what Brown went through to push him to this point, so he has now killed himself and his family. There's only 1 stanza left, and the deed is done, like we said, so now Dylan has to wrap up this grim tale. How's he going to do it? Well, in a very surprising way, I think. It starts with the obvious, but then goes to the very unexpected. There's 7 people dead on a South Dakota farm. There's 7 people dead on a South Dakota farm. Somewhere in the distance, there's 7 new people born. And that last line, I'm not sure anybody saw that coming or anything like that the first time they heard the song. I talked a lot about the relentless, incessant nature of the song and the situation. The other thing about it is just how indifferent the world is. That's a major component of this song. Not just indifference to the suffering of Hollis Brown and his family, but obviously to anybody in that type of situation, to anybody poor and starving. Something else to touch on in this part of the song, the end of the song, those last 2 stanzas changed perspective yet again. So remember, we started at a removed distance, then we were right there, during all of it, all the way through the murder, and then there's seven breezes blowing all around the cabin door. At that point, and from there to the end of the song, we're now one step back removed as well. Thought that was really interesting. So it's like after the killings, we're now out of that cabin, looking at it from across the prairie is how I imagine it. And that adds to that air of indifference. Another thing that most critics and commentators on the song miss, it's there, in my opinion anyway, is that Dylan is asking us, could this be you? Could circumstances turn you into Hollis Brown? And part of that is that perspective change. When he says over and over again, you, your babies, you prayed, your grass. Obviously he's talking to Hollis Brown, but, and this is classic Dylan playing with the language, he's literally talking to us. He's singing and we're listening. So we're very subtly invited, there's that word again, invited to think about that and wonder, could that happen to us? Now, a few other people in the past have pointed that out. I think I'm the only one to point this out. One of my biggest takeaways from the song as well is how it inverts the, central mythos of the American psyche, which is independence. Right from the very start, the American Revolution was the War of Independence. We don't need the monarchy, we don't need the mother country, we can do this ourselves. And then in the frontier man, taming the Wild West, self-reliance, getting by on just your grit, providing for your family. I'm not trying to get political at all when I point out the fact that to this day, America has less of a social safety net than any peer nation. So this idea that you can just get by on your own, you'll find a way if you've got the right stuff, has been with us from the beginning, still is with us in large parts. And it's, didn't just jump from the American Revolution to the frontier, like the Western frontier in South Dakota, but look at Davy Crockett, right? Without judging then, we love this idea, but the song turns it on its head where, does Hollis Brown deserve his fate? Probably not. If he had just worked harder, would he and his family have survived? Well, no. And given everything else Dylan was saying and singing about at this time in his career, it seems an obvious but completely overlooked question from this song is, what kind of country do we want to be? What do we want to do for those who are on the bottom rung of the socioeconomic ladder? Hollis Brown and his family, clearly they're dirt farmers. They're as poor, disadvantaged as it gets. So there's a micro-level story that everyone focuses on with the song, but there may be a macro-level question. So again, going back to that, do we want to be indifferent to suffering? And furthermore, I think the most interesting part of the song, the most interesting implication is, and if we are indifferent, what kind of atrocities does that enable? Oddly enough, I'm sure Dylan, I'm guessing, but I'm sure he sees a lot of good in the doctrine of self-reliance, as do I. I mean, after all, he worked his way from anonymity to being one of the most successful humans you can imagine, right? Money, fame, endless praise, you name it. But luckily, storytellers like him and his idol Woody Guthrie chose to use their talents that they got by on to tell the stories of less fortunate people, including fictional ones, which in turn should make us think about real ones. Anyway, that's it. Thanks for watching.